So then on our second day of riding into Guatemala, our whole mission of the day was to get to Antigua. In Antigua, we were going to rendezvous with a friend of mine, Matt Savino. And Matt is a friend of mine from when I used to live in Los Angeles. I'm from Kansas City originally, but then I lived in Los Angeles, and Matt is a friend of mine from both Kansas City and Los Angeles. And Matt had just recently quit his job, and well, I shouldn't say quit his job, he just got laid off basically. So we rendezvoused with Matt. We rolled into Antigua, and we didn't know where we were gonna go, where we were gonna meet, what hotel or wherever. We were gonna rendezvous with him, and as we pulled in, we pulled up to the sidewalk, and I looked over, and there's Matt sitting at this bar. The chances of, this is a pretty sizable town, the chances of hitting that one street, that one section of that street, and pulling over right there in the very first restaurant, there's Matt sitting in the window, is a needle in a haystack. So we saw each other from across the way, and man, we just needed a hay field. That's all we needed. Just, hey, buddy! It was an awesome moment, actually. Semana Santa, so they were doing the same thing with the incense all over town, and the theatrical displays, and all the families would have this. It's actually it's a dye of like flower petals, right?
Yeah, they would do flower petals and dyed sawdust. Different colors, very ornate patterns. Every family does their own thing in their own part of the street. And we got lots of pictures of that. It's beautiful.
I mean, it takes them like a couple days to do this artwork in their section of the street. And what they do is they rent that section of the street, and when their time is up, they wipe it out and a new family takes over and they do their section.
Bob and I, of course, never met Matt, but we heard a lot of stories about him. And while, yeah, it does seem somewhat improbable to roll up on this guy in this town, if you ever meet Matt, he does kind of stick out. I mean, you can see him coming from a mile away. So we just happened to cross paths, but it doesn't seem as unbelievable to me now.
But other than that, nothing really camera worthy.
Just a lot of big hands.
Our friend Matt, this is not camera worthy, but our friend Matt was in love with this girl that pretty sure wasn't a girl. This is Matt's smile.
He nailed it.
That's hilarious.
That's hilarious. Right there.
I'm really sad. I'm really happy.
So we went to El Salvador. It was probably the easiest border crossing we had of our 9 border crossings. El Salvador was the easiest. Maybe we were the only ones dumb enough to try to go into El Salvador, but we were one of the only ones there, and they were nice and friendly, and they expedited our process. We were there for less than an hour probably. And we rolled into this town called El Tunco. And but man, there were horses up and down the beach. It was a young backpacker kind of town, and it was safe, and we had no problems. It was fun. We were there for all of one day, one night. So after 2 nights, 1 full day in El Tunco, we were gonna venture into Honduras and Nicaragua, and ultimately trying to get to Costa Rica. The next day was a handful for us because it was the first time and only time thus far that we had 2 border crossings in the same day. And so there's very, very green. There's all these different volcanoes. At any different time you look around, there's different sizes of volcanoes around. So we had really hit the weather really, really good up until this point.
4 miles, left turn, all downhill.
Honduras wasn't much of a challenge for us. We were there for a couple hours, rode through until we got to the border of Nicaragua. It kind of pays to get a handler. These handlers, they all try to rip you off at first. They all ask for a lot of money, and they want that money, that amount of money from each individual. What we ended up doing is paying these guys about anywhere between 10 to 20 bucks total for the group of us to go through. So when we got in Nicaragua, now it's coming up to, the sun is starting to set. Now we're starting to butt up to, as I mentioned earlier, that we ride for a month. and we go back to work for a month. Now, because we had enjoyed some time in El Tunco and El Salvador, we'd spent a couple extra days in Antigua, in Guatemala. We spent a couple extra days in San Miguel de Allende because we had bike troubles. We're starting to get behind schedule. So now some things are starting to fall off of our schedule. So we ended up picking up the next day and going to San Juan del Sur, because that is a town that we knew that we wanted to hang out in and spend a couple days because it's a cool little surf town. We got a really beautiful Airbnb, this Adobe style Airbnb on this cliff line overlooking the whole village of San Juan del Sur. And again, the waves are good, the nightlife is good. It's a very scenic town. Again, a pretty strong expat community. A lot of expats go there and live. And we didn't know this at the time when we were there, but there was some political unrest that was brewing that about a week after we were there, it totally exploded, and they shut down all the roads going into and out of San Juan del Sur. And so as we kicked on down the road, we were thankful that we missed another disaster, because there were people that were standing there for weeks. So as we left San Juan del Sur, we were finally heading towards the border of Costa Rica. And if you remember Dr. Phil, who I mentioned earlier, who is the doctor, American doctor who was living in San Miguel de Allende, he said there's a place you're gonna cross called Penis Blancas. My pronunciation might not be great on that, but I'm gonna stick with Penis Blancas. You figure it out. And so as we crossed Penis Blancas into the border of Costa Rica, I had been there in the past. I like Costa Rica. I wasn't expecting any hardship at the border. That is not what we found. They were incredibly thorough, but that's kind of the way this trip is going. Canada was a pain in the butt. Costa Rica was a pain in the butt. Again, if I were to put a priority guessing list on which ones I thought were going to be painful, I wouldn't have said Canada or Costa Rica. Both of them totally ludicrous. And because we got kind of jammed up in some of these other towns, we were starting to get in hustle mode. We knew we were starting to pass things that we want to see, but we also knew we were coming back for leg 6, and we were going to be exploring more of Costa Rica and Panama, because leg 6 was going to be the time was the same of a month, but it was going to be a shorter distance. So we had time to explore Costa Rica and Panama in that leg. So right now, we're just worried about getting from the border to San Jose, Costa Rica.
What are you doing? I didn't notice. He said like he was the only Asian guy, and the person she was described to.
And when we were arriving in San Jose, I have a cousin who works for Intel, the computer company Intel, and one of his friends is a guy named Manuel. So as soon as we got to San Jose, Manny was there waiting to receive us, and he instantly took us to his favorite restaurant, Hooters. As if we don't get to see Hooters restaurants, being Americans.
Did nothing.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh, holy.
Not a fucking car until the moment I try.
It's set in a beautiful tropical environment, but it's a big city. Rolling into San Jose, it's just, there's toll roads and traffic, and it's kind of like being in Miami. It's just a huge bustling town. And of course, about 2 hours from town, the skies opened up and our weather luck changed. And we've been wet a lot since then.
And that was it. And we tucked our bikes away, and that was the end of leg 5. And it was a long stretch. It was now at the end of leg 5, the level of accomplishment, because again, reflecting back to how leg 5 started with all of we weren't sure if we wanted to start it. And now at the end of it, we were happy to have it behind us. We had a few laughs again. It felt good to laugh again, which the pain was still it was present. It was always just underneath the surface, I would say, for all of us. So we were finding some solace in all of our friendships, and it was good for the 3 of us to get out on the road, and it was good. It felt especially good whenever we found a laugh, because those laughs were coming from a deeper, darker place. And so those laughs were more genuine, and they were needed. Our soul needed to feel a little laughter. And so when we were at the end of leg 5, it was a good reminder that we can do this and that we can all do this together and that we can still highlight the similarities of the people in the world and that we're still one tight unit. And personally, from my perspective, I was happy that it was over, but I was also now realizing that I'm looking forward to the next leg at that point, leg 6.
Yeah, my one thing about arriving in Costa Rica, it made me reflect a little bit more on Mexico and all the things that we actually missed. I found myself wanting to have more experiences in Mexico. Seeing all those places in Central America just whet my appetite for more of that country. It was an amazing country, and it's just unfortunate the things that happened there and how we all felt like we just kind of needed to move on. But we really did, and I really think that after we left Mexico, everything changed its tune, and we're looking forward to moving on.
Don't forget to tune in to the next episode of End of All Roads to follow the boys as they continue their ride around the world. See what new and fun places await them and what challenges they're going to have to overcome. All in the next episode of End of All Roads.